Welcome to the Incredible Machines podcast, where we speak with incredible people doing incredible things to learn just what makes them so incredible. Today we are joined by Naretha Pretorius, whose titles include a reframed thinking and solutions finding facilitator, integral coach, TEDx and keynote speaker, MC, an artist, and head of campus for Vega. In this episode, we delve deep into Naretha's beliefs about creativity and its universal potential, a unique approach and philosophy of education and branding, the power of storytelling in our lives, frameworks for creativity and thinking differently, and much, much more. But without further ado, we bring you Naretha Pretorius. Welcome back to the Incredible Machines podcast, where we interview incredible people doing incredible things and try to work out what makes them incredible and learn from that. I'm very excited about our guest today, but just before I introduce her, I also need to introduce my business partner and a creative producer, Luke Holden. Thanks for joining.
Pleasure to be here again.
Yeah, we're very excited about this episode. So, and I'm Jonathan Oliff, serial entrepreneur and founder of the Tim Agency and Tim Podcast. So today we have a very special guest, but before I introduce her, I want to return to that definition of an incredible machine. So there's a longer version of this story. It'll be in episode 1 and we'll have that in the show notes so I can return to that. But basically the story goes, I was in Cape Town International Airport in the lounge, and I was on a phone call with my business partner and financial director, and we had a terrible day of business. It was brutal, sullen and downtrodden, and I was relaying that to them, and it wasn't good. We were going to have to make some really difficult decisions after that call, and suddenly, mid-sentence, I just looked at the stairwell and there was this head and shoulders coming up the stairs, and I just everything changed. Okay, so I said, my words were something like, wait guys, it's Brian Habana. He's just entered the room. I got to go see him. This is the best day ever. And I went and saw him, and the longer version will go through my superpower of being awkward and how I really shattered that introduction and had to think about it on the long flight home back to Durban. But what I realized in thinking about it and rehearsing it in my mind, that something had changed in my day, and it was just so amazing. And that there are people out there that are among us, and they can walk into a room and change the room. And that's not easy to do. Like, that's something that's significant and it's aspirational. So anyway, now our guest is definitely one of those people. She walks into the room and changes the room, and I've seen it many times at the events that she puts on, and the effort and on school campus coalitions with industry specialists. And so she's an artist, an educator, a coach, and a facilitator of reframed thinking and solution finding. I think she coined the title thinking facilitator. And if nothing else is a creative at heart. So we're going to discuss creativity here and discuss an awesome local case study that she's picked for us to go through. So welcome, Naretha Pretorius.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
This is incredible.
Yeah, it's incredible to have you here.
Having an Habana moment.
Yes, Naretha also coined the Habana moment, yes. So I met Naretha some 15 years ago when I was doing my honors at Vega, strategic brand leadership, and in Vega Durban, the institution that Naretha came to Durban to set up. And when I'm asked about studying at Vega, I often relay this message, so apologies if anyone's heard it before, the listeners out there, that I learned more in that year at Vega than I did in the 3 university years prior combined. So it was like my head hurt almost every day with the amount of information. And a lot of that can be accredited to the Navigators and the curriculum, and all of that I credit to Naretha for picking. Those are the people that you would pick and manage and facilitate. So, so I feel that experience is very much due to you. Now, we'll have it in the show notes as well, and we'll talk about it maybe a little bit later as we do the timeline and that. But there is a TEDx talk that we'll link to that Naretha has and is brilliant. I really recommend it. But before we do that, we always like to start with the origins. So, how did we get you, or why are you like this?
Why am I like this? I'm going to blame my parents. It's a nice blame. I think from a upbringing point of view, there's a few complexities that makes it maybe a nice culmination of, the formation of who I am. Firstly, I'm a great mix of my mum and dad combined. So dad, an amazing artist, highly creative. He was the superintendent for art at the Transvaal education department. So he was very creative, and I definitely inherited some of that creativity. And then my mum is a person that always puts herself sometimes second so that she can serve other people. So she was a social worker, she was a manager of a retirement village, and I think I've got that combination of mum being the manager of serving other people, caring for others, and then the creative mix. But then there's also, I think, my upbringing, and that's where the TEDx, if people listen to that, they'll get a sense of what's the context of what I grew up in. And a lot of who I have become was the foundation of my childhood for all the good, but also for some of the bad. The good is just growing up in a household that was very solid, good parenting, good values in the household. But then the context in which I grew up in is what shaped me at the end. And I rebelled against it. I've always been, I think I was born a free thinker, hence the fascination with thinking and the liberation of thinking and wanting to facilitate and help others to liberate their thinking was maybe because I myself was restricted to do that when I was a kid. So just the context in which I grew up in. So let's go back to the 70s. So born in the 70s in a very Afrikaans conservative community where everything was Afrikaans. My schooling, my church, university, everything was Afrikaans, the circle of friends, etc. And that was I want to call it almost like little world that I grew up in. Happy childhood, so nostalgic and so beautiful, lots of freedom just to be a child. But the freedom was restricted by I will call it the Afrikaner Calvinistic ideological framework in which I grew up in. And I only really became more aware of that when I got older. And the pivotal moment was the day my dad died in the 90s. So I was in my 20s at varsity. In fact, I'm just going to share with the audience, you gave me a lovely exercise to do before this, where it was drawing the lifeline. And it was such an interesting exercise to do because childhood went up into very happy life. And then when my dad passed away, it was super sad, almost like hitting depression mode. And then the lifeline goes up and it goes up and down, up and down, up and down between the happy and sad, or exciting or not. And that was actually the biggest, if you ask me where does me come from? Where does this origin? That shaped me more than anything else, was the complexities of deep loss and almost like losing oneself through the process to then go really deep into trying to search for the self. And then to identify what is it that my values are really about and what shapes me truly, especially rebelling against what I was used to. as a child and I was raised. And it's not about values of, let's say, how I was brought up, but more the belief systems and the ideology, which I then obviously realized was all about racism, sexism, and all the, inequalities, be the gender inequality, etc. And I just realized I don't agree with it. So I think I'm a nice complex mix of things that shaped the person that I am today. What I'm very grateful for is it actually shaped my career. It formed my career for me. So in a way, as much as I can say, I had great loss in my life, it's also a great gain to go. It shaped me to be the thinker that I am today, wanting to serve others, to help them with their thinking and their becoming, which is now it had to happen. It was a good origin.
That's amazing. So, and I'll link to that worksheet. It's an entrepreneurs organization, Lifeline worksheet. And I really recommend that people do it.
Yeah.
I'm glad also useful, and it ends up being a bit of an ECG. I think the heart, like you can see the ups and downs. Yeah. So and that's amazing. And so that you again, the trauma and what that tragedy helped form you, and that you were aware of it in order to move forward. Can you tell us more about the coming to Durban and that journey?
Before we started having this conversation, you mentioned pictures of fishing.
Yes.
My fondest memories as a child is we used to go on holidays. My mum has a beautiful saying. She says holidays were like the glue for the family. And it's so true. And I still believe in it. So, we also make effort to go as a family. We go on holidays. And coming to Durban, well, the first reason, there's actually a short story, and I'm going to try and keep it short. So the first reason is I feel rooted in KZN because of the amazing childhood memories of amazing holidays at Cape Vidal. And we would go there for like 3 weeks and set up camp, literally set up camp. And it's like a mini community of just knowing everybody and that sense of freedom and the smell of the kind of forest, soil, and the ocean. So beautiful memories of KZN. And then I started working at Vega in 2001, it was May, it was my birthday, started working at Vega, and it was a beautiful change in my life. I knew I landed in the right place. And a year or so in, I had a hijacking experience in Joburg, and that was awful. I did reverse myself out of the situation. I'm very proud of myself, my driving skills in that moment. But it was the catalyst of me going, I don't want to be in Joburg anymore. This is not my place to be. And so I went to Gordon Cook, who's the founder of Vega School, and I said to him, listen, I need to move. I need to go. And he asked me, so where do you want to go? I said, Mom, I want to live in KZN. He said, that's great. What are you going to do? What do you want to do? I said, well, if I had a choice, I would have taken Vega with me. And he went quiet and he said, okay, come see me in a week. And a week later, I knock on his door and Gordon is, okay, you need to go find us a campus. And I said, all right, bring it on. I was in my 20s. So I said, okay. So I got on a plane. We've looked at different buildings. I found us a campus. I flew back. I said, now we need students. So we found students and found a house, moved everything to KZN. And 3 months later, we opened the campus. So our Durban campus moved, and that's how I landed in Durban.
And that was a Westfall-based campus, I remember.
By the quarry.
Yes, that's where I was, actually.
Yeah,
I remember.
exactly.
It's a beautiful campus.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Luke, we've been to the new campus in Lucia.
Great,
It's like, it's stunning. And had the opportunity of being involved in an industry night. I'm going to bring it up because it's something that makes Vega different. And I think it's, again, I'll attribute it to you and credit you with it, I think, because I'm not sure that it's done nationally exactly the same, but maybe it is. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I know I've worked with the team in Joburg, Nikki and them, Kirsty, love them. Gordon Cook is amazing, like a totally aspiration, Cara Enslin, like so in the sort of even the naming, but the brand itself, but Vega nights and facilitators, and again, it's borderline where this is marketing, but it's the effort that you guys put in. We have an industry council. I've never heard of that with any other, and I've been involved in other tertiary brands, educational brands, and when I was fortunate enough to work with Vega at one stage in my life, and the fact that we had Vega nights on our team made the client partner Vega totally happy and comfortable and excited to be able to work with sort of their product. So that effort that you guys do with as a tertiary education, having these industry nights and culminating the creative industry in Durban, I think that is just incredible. So yeah, congratulations on that. I think it's also that will be the success, I think. I don't know, we didn't talk about this at all, but there's big change happening in the private university spectrum. I don't know if you can touch on that. Can you touch any of that?
I can talk to what I can talk to. So I can talk to what is already made public. So I want to circle back before I go into that. You mentioned earlier when we started, you spoke about Navigators, and I thought, the audience is going to start thinking me like a astrological or some sort of space school. And just to touch on the Navigator, so Vega is the brightest navigational star, and hence that we call ourselves Navigators at Vega because we believe in directing and guiding our students. So I just wanted to touch on why we're called Navigators. And then you asked a question about the public-private university and higher education. So we are actually challenging the notion of university and questioning whether private higher education can also be named university. So we a little bit on a mission at the moment to go, what does that look like? What are the criteria to be called a university? And because of that, there are now criteria being developed so that we can go, what do you need to have in place to be actually called a university if you're a private higher education institution, which is really remarkable.
Yeah, and it's awesome. It's incredible. But when I first heard that and what was happening around that effort, I thought, Vega's the perfect vehicle to be involved there, and will come out on top because the brand is so strong, and the brand is so strong for many reasons, but specifically because I feel because of that effort on the ground by people like you.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted to bring about. I didn't think we would necessarily need to get to talk about it, but it did make me think about it's the people on the ground that make that stuff happen, and why I can foresee stuff, but I don't see Vega changing, like other than getting better and getting bigger.
Can I latch on to that quick?
Yeah.
So maybe we can talk a little bit about what makes us feel so sure that it can only get better because the brand is so strong. And maybe it's worth talking about what at the end makes the brand strong. Is we, as a brand, we're a brand-focused school, so one hopes that a brand-focused school gets it right, right? Because we teach others how to build strong brands and meaningful brands for that matter. But something that I wanted to touch on is the importance of having a philosophy, an ethos, and values behind the brand that actually drives it. Because if you've got that, almost the same as like humans should have it, right? Is that if you have that, it forms the foundation, it drives everything that you do. So you're talking about the people on the ground. The people on the ground are driven and believe in it. So they're motivated by doing what they do because they strongly believe in the philosophy of the brand and what the brand stands for, and therefore what the brand can achieve. So we have a story, and that's why our name itself is attached to a metaphor, a story, and that story just keeps us going. That's why we believe in being navigators, or when we do things like industry night and we get the industry involved, it's for a very specific reason that we do it. It's that kind of motivating drive. So my invitation to people is also to say, what is the story that drives you here? You know, and for me, that is so beautiful because we genuinely believe in what Vega stands for. So it gives you that push and motivation to do what we do.
Yeah, that authenticity comes through.
Exactly.
I use this, and it's, I don't want to be, I don't want it to come, never to be cynical, but it's because it's about the Springbok specifically. And I love the Springbok. Yeah. And I think we do. But we're the best scrummagers in the world. And I sometimes think about that, like, why do we think that the Springboks are the best?
Yeah.
Maybe it's because we tell everyone we are, and we live that.
And we believe
have
it.
Like, yeah, we believe
Strongly
it.
believe it.
Strongly believe it.
Yeah.
And we have Bucky ads where we push, and we've got these. So it's literally, everyone believes it. It's like that a book you've probably read before, but it's that Be More Pirate, or I'll link to that in the show notes too. But the essence of the Jolly Roger being the first brand, visible brand, and what that flag, when it was shown, what it inspired in people's lives, not always positive in any way, but like just seeing that you believed from the stories that were told, and it actually made some of those stories were not even true. They just were. They were urban legends and that sort of stuff. Right. But when you saw that flag, you feel it. A certain emotions came up, and you banished ship.
Yeah.
Luke, I'm not sure if you felt that. Do you have a personal? I've never asked this, for a personal brand that's your favorite brand. Maybe it's even equipment or software that you just feel lives the promise, like Naretha's talking about.
I would say that I don't have many Apple products. That's just a dig to all you Apple people.
Except for the Apple laptop in front of you.
Yeah, but not a mobile, you know. I saw I'd never have a mobile device. I'm sold on the Mac system.
Right.
But it's just interesting what you said. So I'm gonna step back a bit, because you know, the Jolly Roger flag goes up and you have all these emotions. And why do we have all these emotions? It's because of all the stories we've heard. You know, it's all our emotions are attached to stories. And so I'm going to take a little segue here, if you don't mind. Something that you said in your TEDx talk, which stood out, and it actually correlates with the case study we're going to talk about. And it's a turning point, and something really important in every good story is you use the word radical disruption. And that's what brands can do too. And every good story has a radical disruption in it. Right. So your radical disruption was your father passing away. But there were other radical disruptions too. It's like sometimes we have more than that. And I think that's really, really cool in terms of brands as well. So you're like, what would you say Vega's radical disruption has been or is currently?
Ooh, good question. You know what? Respectfully, Vega often needs, because of the brand that we are, we've had to face a few conformity, I think, is I say it in my TEDx as well. Conformity is the antithesis of transformation. And we often need to face and challenge any notion of conformation, regulation. So even the education system that we operate in is unfortunately, and I'll say it straight, and this goes public, is that it's riddled with notions of conformity, regulation, rules, you have to do it this way. Even just, you know, we would love to be able to push out new programs and be able to change the education system radically, but we have parameters that we need to play by. But then I use the analogy that you can still apply radical disruption even if you have parameters. Life is filled with parameters. You know, if you're a child, I use the analogy of when I was a child and I grew up in a small holding, absolute freedom, but I knew that I shouldn't go over that fence. And then I go, okay, fine, I can play here, I can play here, but going over that fence presents possibly a risk for us. Are we still good here?
Yeah, we're good.
Presents a potential risk. But the radical disruption that Vega often needs to go, we can't just produce students or work with students that are the product that just conform by what, let's say, what the industry is. Our radical disruption is to go, what is it that society needs so that we produce students that go out there that they can apply the radical disruption. Otherwise, we're just conforming to what it is instead of what it can be. So our programs are designed in a way where it's about that teaching you and learning how to think in a way that you can confidently and comfortably apply a form of disruption by the time you go out in so-called industry. But we also believe you don't just go into an industry, you go into society, and that you can genuinely make a meaningful difference when you go out there. And although we're a brand-focused school, we also, teach the philosophy of, brands can actually genuinely make a difference if it's meaningful brands and if it's brands with meaning and purpose. So radical disruption happens ongoingly, actually, in the Vega space, in the way that we hold the conversations and having critical debates with each other on what is it that we do and why do we do it? Constantly to ask ourselves, why is it that we do, and why does it matter? I hope that kind of
that's great.
Answers.
I think it's exactly what I was looking for.
Okay.
And I think it leads to the question of creativity and how does creativity play a role in, not that creativity necessarily needs to cause radical disruption, but it can also see something that happens, and this leads into the case studies. We see a radical disruption, and how can we play off of that to encourage society to think differently?
Yeah, see, I'm a born creative, and what I've learned, I was comfortable being a creative because I am a creative. But I'm also a strong believer that every person is born with the capability of being creative, right? So if you just observe children are creative inherently. By nature, they are creative. For any person with a child who has worked with children, observed children, just watch what they do. They will break things to make things. They will want to draw on walls, and they would want to sing and dance and express themselves and climb out walls and do all sorts of, and the imagination of a child is just so amazing. So I believe that every person, and therefore every industry for that matter, and every organization and every brand for that matter, could utilize and make use of our inherent creative capabilities. And if you look at the case study we're going to bring up, that is such a beautiful example of where creativity, through the form of storytelling, through the form of using our imagination and tapping into like a human truth, or the deeper, almost, I want to say, the heart of the human. And that took a creative team that said, what if? What if we could? We want to honor, and how do we use story and narrative and the power of our imagination and all those beautiful creative, the sound of it, the music of it, the visualizing of it just really goes deep. I mean, if you can just embrace creative capabilities in people, I strongly believe an accountant is highly creative. I mean, can you see the stuff that they sometimes have to figure out? And if we just tap into that creativity as our way of thinking, that we can go, the ability that creativity can have, how we can make amazing things. So I'd love for us, when we go into that case study, just to show how creativity, narrative, storytelling, being human, was the essence of what makes it so powerful.
Just before we get there, I want to touch on, because I think we're there, a framework that you might use. So we use this framework: insight before idea, idea before execution or channel.
Yes.
So, but I've heard you say it a little bit differently, or do you want to elaborate on that?
When you say I say it a little bit differently in my previous conversations,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Okay, let's go.
So again, people come. So just before for the audience, so people come and have come to me with an app idea. They've got an application. John, can you build this? Yeah. Can we do this? We it's like Facebook, but it's not, or whatever. And I'm like, okay, cool. This is the execute. What's the idea? Right. What's the how did you get here? So again, how did we get here? So what's the insight? What's that formed this idea?
Right.
And then you can question that insight. How did you come up with that insight? What data, information did you congregate to draw an insight out of and create that idea? And then, so that's the framework that we would work with. So
I would like to use two examples, right? Okay. So there's the framework that we use at Vega and the way that we train our students. And then it's very similar to what I do, let's say, for coaching and just my approach to working with people. And just it latches with our personal journey that I've gone through. So my personal insight has almost reaffirmed why it matters to kind of follow a process of that kind. So I'm going to first start with, at Vega, we believe in concept, right? It's about the concept must drive it, but you cannot get to a concept unless it's based on an insight or insights that you've developed. And it's the hardest thing to crack, is to know how to get to genuine insight. Not I have found, it's the deeper insight that drives it. So that real human truth, if you will. So our process is very much about encouraging our students to go through, and I almost want to use like inventive ways of doing research. It goes a little bit beyond like your desktop and your primary and so forth and so forth. We use things like design thinking and other methodologies to go hard in some quite creative ways of doing research, to get to the point of discovering what's the real insight behind it. And at the end, you're working with humans here, and humans are complex. But if you observe people and if you tune into people and you listen to people, you can genuinely develop a deeper insight of what's the real driver here. And that insight at the end drives, or is the motivation for what is the overarching concept, the kind of narrative that holds it together. And then the rest follows. Then you can go, why do you do what you need to do? And informs the possible how. Then the imagination and the creativity can take over and just go, let's go wild and see how do we, bring this insight to life, or what's the message you want to deliver. And then on the side where I do coaching, so if I look at my personal story, my real transformation happened because of discovery, because of going into some really intense self-searching and some deep awareness building and just going through a reflective process. And with that awareness, I developed insight. I got to understand. And that understanding was the reason for why I knew I needed to change, and why I need to change and how I can change. And I do that in coaching too. So it's the same pattern almost. It's the same process. It's about becoming more aware. When you become more aware, you develop insight. If you develop insight, you know why you need to change, and then the change can happen because now there's reason to change. And then you just build new habits, new ways of doing, which then transforms the being. So then you become a different person.
Amazing. So we talk about it, we call it 4 A's. So it's awareness, and then acceptance. So understand, like I am. That's the way.
Radical acceptance.
Yeah, radical acceptance. So awareness, radical acceptance, and then action. Yeah. So I must do this thing. And then the fourth one is a bonus one. And this is what I think you do really well, is adherence too.
Yes.
So doing it over and over again.
Absolutely.
And not getting bored.
Yeah.
Just as a side, like anecdote, again, I can still remember this. It's almost 20 years ago. So plus 15 years, over 15 years. My entrance exam for my honors year at Vega had a question in it. And I've spoken to you about this, but it was, why do crabs walk sideways? Must not be the actual answer. Like, we don't want biologists But that was and you had to come and sit with an answer. You had to sit with it and go, okay, cool. And that was an entrance exam. I would love to seen the answers, and it might, imagine it made it so much more fun to mark those papers and say like, okay, cool, these guys are a little bit different.
And can you remember your answer?
I can.
Yeah?
Spit it out, dude.
Crabs walk sideways because they're the reason the earth turns.
Ah.
They're actually turning the earth.
They actually anchored. And they just keep the earth going.
Keep it spinning.
So if all the crabs had to start walking in the other direction?
It'd be a real problem.
We have a problem.
It's like
we have a problem.
Like bees going missing. It's as big as that.
And for the flat earthers, I mean.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. I think that might be the perfect place to segue into our case study.
Awesome.
Irene was at school when she was shot. I couldn't accept it. She got hurt and you're never gonna see her ever again.
During the peaceful march of 16 June 1976, police responded by suddenly opening fire on gathered school children.
16-year-old Irene Palatse was one of many learners who lost their lives during the course of the 1976 uprising. Today we honor her life by learning about her and what happened to her through the person who knew her best, her younger brother Ronald, who we are privileged to have here today.
The student we will be honoring today at Krugersdorp is Noble Mabaso. When recounting the events that led to Noble's death, Leonard said the day began like any other, only to take a sudden and tragic turn.
The gun that shot him, a 10-year-old boy with an R5, that was, you know.
Holy Family College has decided to partner with Nedbank and YouthX and adopt and honor a student into Holy Family. His name is Karabo Manoy.
I see my son's name on the honors board. He's right there in a wall to be seen by everybody. I'm pleased, I'm happy.
Telling these type of stories, I think is fundamentally important in making people feel acknowledged. If kids in 1976 could fight against a police state being shot at, most of them dying, a lot of them dying. If kids then could do that, what's stopping me now being able to achieve what I can?
It was beautiful, absolutely stunning.
Beautiful,
Stunning. So, and sure. And that has roots here in Durban too. I don't know if you've...
yeah, exactly. A beautiful team at Joe Public contributed to making this. And just, wow. And congratulations to them for winning a bunch of lorries as a result.
Incredible machines there. I think that Joe Public with Pepe Maria is an absolute incredible machine. Brandon in Durban, Brandon Governor, credit there. So we look at that again quickly, just to go through our principles and what we see coming out of that campaign. But there's so much in there. We could speak another hour on it if we had to, if we were able to. So in the EQ concept that we work with is the experiences replace messages. So we'll have the link to the actual ad that went out. That was the case study, and we'll have that in the show notes too, so you can go and people can go and experience that. But I have goosebumps right now, and it's emotional that ad. It is the message is replaced by the experience. You can feel, and we went to school. Yeah, and you can see those visuals there, how it would have felt. So that's definitely tapping into the EQ side of things and that emotional quotient. The adaptive quotient, which is user-generated content, there looks to be a lot of content that's come out of that. And just even in the case study specifically that we've shown, the seniors at school, the heads of school speaking, and you can imagine how the shares that would have happened and content that would have been shared by the students.
Absolutely.
And we've all seen the war cries and that sort of stuff that happen and go viral. This content would be out there, and the brand would have a place within that Nedbank, help create that experience. And then the last bit that just came to mind was in the IQ category, is the detach and distribute. How this is, it's got many locations, many schools, and I hope that it just carries on going until everyone's represented, if they haven't been yet. But it's just such an amazing effort. I don't know if you have anything to add there, or either of you.
On that last point, can you imagine for the schools, not just was it about the honor of putting the name on the honors board, but the honor for the school to be part of it.
Yeah.
And that's a sense of honor that extends. Can you imagine that other schools go, we'd love to do that too? It extends immediately.
Yeah, and celebrating that. I mean, perfect. So I think if we can get into your quote that you've picked, and we love this part, and I love to pick people's brains on their quotes, and then see if I can understand them a bit better. And I think it's very much in line with your journey. And it's Descartes, I think, for therefore I am, which actually should read as per his original quote, which is, I doubt, therefore I think, therefore I am. What does that mean to you?
I must say, I only became aware of that a while ago, where I watched a video, and I can't remember exactly who did the video, but when I realized, oh, there's more to it, because I think it's such a cliche almost now, like people know the quote, I think, therefore I am, and a lot of kind of rip-offs have happened from it, you know, like playing with it, with artists doing all sorts of things with it. And the moment I heard that, I doubt, therefore I think, therefore I am, I was like, yo, that really did strike me, because every human being, and that's kind of working with his philosophy too, to go, he questioned existence, right? Are we even real? Like, how do we know that we are real? And how do we know that we exist? Actually stemmed from the idea that because we doubt, suggests that because we have the ability to doubt and therefore ask questions or question things, it means that we are thinking entities. So we have a consciousness, there's awareness, and that makes us who we are. That defines the self in a way to go. So I'm like, that strikes me so beautifully, because I'm in love with questions. I thrive being able to go, I facilitate by asking questions, I support people by asking questions, and so forth. So coaching is all about the art of asking the right question so that the person can tap into consciousness and therefore figure themselves out and make the change. And that was what really got me. I was like, I love that idea of doubt. And often people find doubt to be a negative thing. Doubt is an inherent blessing, actually, to go. If you can doubt certain things, it suggests that you're a deep thinker, and that it kind of gives you permission to go deep and figure things out and embrace it. Embrace doubt. It's a good thing. It's as much as I say embrace discomfort. It's a good thing. It means there's something to be found. There's something to figure out. So that's where that came from.
Amazing. It came to me now we were speaking, and I've mentioned Fight Club before in an episode, but are you familiar with Fight Club?
Of course, you cannot be.
I've come up with, like, that made me think, like, is there a Tyler Durden in my life? That someone that's there but's not there.
Yeah.
And then I think I'll credit Vega with this.
Yeah.
I actually thought, who's Tyler Durden am I, potentially? But just to segue off that and asking those type of questions that are introspective, and you mentioned coaching. Can you talk about the future and what's ahead of you with the coaching that you've taken up and that?
Absolutely. Just how did I land in coaching is maybe important to ask. I realized that this journey has been going on for 20 years. I have developed to become a coach over 20 years. And the thread was I'm a reflective practitioner. I love asking questions. I'm actually really good at it. It's my natural way of doing. My mum told me a story once of when I was in high school. A woman that worked with her daughter was in the same class as I or as me? You know, I'm Afrikaans, so help me out here.
As me.
As me. Thank you very much. My son would have said the same things. He always corrects me. And my mum told the story that this girl went to her mum and said, Naretha asked the most interesting questions in class. And when I heard that story, I was like, you're right. I've always been a person that likes asking questions. I'm curious in general. So my journey of becoming a coach has actually been going on for 20 years. Then I did my master's. And my master's I did a critical self-study. It's an autoethnography is the fancy word for it, the research term for it. And that was about being more reflective and asking tough questions for yourself so that you can figure things out and therefore da-da-da. So that happened in master's. And then a very good friend of mine, Wendy Mahoney, invited me to join a NLP course, Neuro-Linguistic programming. Fell in love with it. Some things I was like, nah, that doesn't work for me. But parts of it was like, I really got intrigued by things like how we use our language and how that's an extension of understanding how we interpret the world and so forth. And I was like, I think I need to go into coaching. That was my outcome of that. And you can become also an NLP coach using NLP. And I just knew that NLP is not 100% for me, but there's magic in it. And then I said, I think I need to go into coaching. Then I decided, let me study coaching. So I did it through the Center of Coaching through UCT and absolutely loved I knew when I started studying it, I knew this is it. I need to be a coach and I'm going to be a coach and I'm going to be a good one. And that was 2 years ago. Then I started coaching. I coach especially within the organization, the broader organization, so not just within Vega School. And I see that's my future now. So I knew now that that's my purpose. And I get extreme joy and a sense of reward being able to serve others and finding themselves and being able to develop themselves. And often it's the simplest things that need to change. So future-wise, looking at how coaching could form part of my core of my career, but also linking it back to maybe things like I also love doing curriculum development or learning development and strategic kind of, seeing big picture and help design the parts that form part of it. So future could also be a space of working into organizational development and working out those kind of strategies and see how things like coaching form part of it. And I'm besotted with culture. So having to help facilitate creating healthy cultures within an organization. So all those things are starting to come nicely together.
Amazing. I think that's it. Thank you so much for all of that. I think there's a lot to unpack. There'll be great learnings from that. I don't know if there's anything else you want to, the mic's yours.
The mic is mine. Let's go. No, time's up. If I could leave with a parting message to people out there, is life is genuinely short. I just turned 50 this year, and I'm like, if only people could embrace the liberty of what thinking and creativity can provide you with, just embrace it. Go for it. Organizations needs to have and embrace it more to go, how else can we apply better thinking and ways of doing? How else can we create healthier cultures for our people? How else can we better support our people? Because if you do, magic happens. People will give you a lot if you give them a lot. And people need to spend a bit more time on themselves too. Because if you do that, you're just a better person and you can do better things. I think that's it.
Amazing. The incredible machine, Naretha Pretorius.